Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Hello, hello, hello. All right, now there might be a chance that my internet could go out on me. My internet company is laying fiber optic, so there's a chance that I momentarily could get disconnected, so don't panic. I should come right back up if that happens. But then again, you never know, and if we don't finish the show, then you can just catch me on my next one. All right. Now, with that said, last week we finished up the four virtues. And again, I'm going to remember all of them here. Okay. Courage, justice, temperance, and it happens to me every time. Benny, help me.
You're missing wisdom there.
Wisdom. It's a mind block. I do this. I always fear that I'm going to forget one, and I do. And it's what my mind does to me. And I know all four of them: courage, temperance, wisdom, and justice. And it's just like when I think about it, that's when it happens.
Yeah, that's always what happens, right? If you just think I'm going to remember, you're going to at one point, the mind is going to trick you then.
Yep. So last week we talked about the four virtues. We did like 3 weeks on the virtues. And this week we're going to talk about how to dealing with people, the Stoic way of dealing with people. And I've got some stories that I can share on this. But go ahead. You take over here.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And good to be back here. And let's look for the internet company to keep us rolling all through the episode. But hey, that's the Stoic way of dealing, right? Just take one moment this is called in the moment. That's how we're going to take it. So no, I think that this topic is pretty much one of the things that really got me going with Stoicism, right? This was one of those things where I felt like, hey, Stoicism is something that I can apply to life. And I wanted to kick it off with one of the quotes that I was reading from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and it's in. I'll just read it here. There it is. It's in Meditations, book 4.6, and it goes like, that sort of person is bound to do that. You might as well resent a fig tree for secreting juice. Anyway, before very long, you'll both be dead and soon forgotten. So that's from Meditations 4.6. And why did it really ring true to me? Is because, we deal with people all the time, right? And at work, I was dealing with someone who was playing some tricks, who was just being a mean colleague, right? Just backstabbing and trying to shove you under the bus whenever he could, and just doing all these sorts of tricks. And I never knew why. Probably he had some things that he was trying to get through as well. But it would annoy me, right? It would affect me. It would make me feel, just not at ease or irritated or angry. And when I read this quote, I was like, wait a minute, this person can't do it. It's like me getting angry at a tree for secreting juice and me getting my fingers sticky to it, right? Why am I getting angry if I'm just going to touch that tree and I know that it's going to be sticky? So I remember the next day I'm going to work, and he came up to me and he just made these comments, right? And before I would have got irritated at least. And now this time I was like, hey, this is just him being him, right? And it kind of even made me laugh a little bit. It's like, okay, I noticed that I could see it from a completely different angle. I was like, my mindset shifted completely, and I could see the absurdity and the humor in it, not just because of his behavior, but because of my reaction, right? And I think that is the biggest shift, that instead of looking at the other person's reaction and looking at how I can change them, I looked at how I can change my perception of their behavior, of the situation. So when I saw that, I was like, you know what? First of all, in the grand scheme of things, this doesn't mean anything, right? This is just a really small blip on the radar, but it affects me. And how can I work on myself? So there's so many different layers on that. It involves like taking responsibility for your own actions, the agency that you have on how you look at the situation, your judgment on the situation. So there's so many Stoic, which I found out later, so many Stoic things coming all at once, but it really shifted my mindset. And I was like, there's nothing, I'm not going to change this person, because he's set in his way. He's rooted really deep at because this was an elderly man. It's like, the only thing that I can do is change my approach to it. I don't think it. If I really ask myself, did I get annoyed by it afterwards? No, I don't. Not as much. I would just see it, and I was a teacher, and this is one example which might illustrate it. As a teacher, I was observed once by my superior, right, by my team lead, and as I was teaching, he would walk in. He came and he sat in the class, and I had like a multimedia, like a digital board, and I wasn't using it because I was doing some other activity, and I was just writing down it. And suddenly he comes up and walks up in the front of the class while I was teaching, being observed by my lead, and that wasn't, it was fine. We were good friends, my lead and I. And I looked at him, and he's like, "Yeah, do you have a USB?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And he went ahead, put it in my laptop, and then he opened the boards and he plugged it in, and he's like, "I'll show you how to use the digital board." And I was like, I'm being observed. So I looked at my lead and was like, "You know what's going on?" And I was like, "Nope." And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to get an argument right now with him. I'm just going to let him be. My lead knows exactly what's going on. I went and passed the classroom. I went to help all the students as much as I could. I just used him like a classroom assistant, and I just went with it. And then afterwards, where normally I wouldn't have said anything, the class was finished. My lead said, "Yeah, everything is fine. That's good." And I had a conversation with him. I just said, "You know what?" He didn't. He was oblivious. He didn't know. He was thinking. He thought he was helping me. So this is kind of how it changed as well. Before I would have gotten angry and I would have gotten frustrated at me, and I would have gone home and was like, "Oh, why did he do this?" And now I just went to him afterwards and like, that was not very, that was quite disrespectful what you did there, because I was working, I was being observed. So instead of dealing it angrily with the moment, I just went after, had a conversation with him, and he's like, "Oh, I wasn't aware of it." And that was another eye opener. Like, you think that people do something maliciously, and I don't know why he was trying to show himself off. There was different. I don't want to get into it too much, but I went over it. So I noticed that difference of my attitude. Instead of getting angry in the moment, I just went with it. I just did the best that I could, and then afterwards I addressed it. And so for me, that one quote, that one sentence, and that always reminds me when I deal with people like that. I was like, this is it. I'm not going to change them, but I need to make sure that I change myself and be the way I want to be.
Yes, yes. No, I completely get that. Before I was ever introduced to Stoicism, I was taught a lesson in the casino industry, because when you're working in the casinos and the table games aspect of it, you're dealing with a lot of people every single day. Whether you're a dealer, whether you're a pit boss, whether you're a table game supervisor, whatever it is, cocktail waitresses, security, slot techs, everybody in the casino that's out there on the front line, you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people every day. And they're coming in, they're spending their money, they're losing money that they probably don't have to lose, and they're going to get frustrated and angry at themselves. And now they have to blame somebody else. And usually, because you are the person that's taking their money, they're going to blame you. So I was taught by the legendary Don Henson. He was the person that taught me craps. A phenomenal person. He was a Stoic, and at the time I didn't know that he was a Stoic, but he was a Stoic. I mean, nothing ever upset the man. He was always calm, cool, and collect. A very, very good teacher. And he's like, "Paul, do you know this person?" "Well, no." "Do they pay your bills?" "Well, they gamble, and that's why I have a job." "Do they pay your bills at home? Do they put food on your table?" Literally, do they put food on your table? "Well, no." "Then why are you taking this personally?" They're mad at themselves. They're not mad at you. They're mad at themselves, and they're taking it out on you. So don't take it personal. And that changed how I viewed people. And when I became a pit boss, I had somebody that got in my face, and I was getting very argumentative back. And, "I'm the boss here. This is my game. I'm watching it, and you're going to do what I say." And then, of course, Donnie Henson pulls me off to the side afterwards, not on the table. He didn't, he let me do what I did. And then he pulled me off to the side, and he's just like, "Now, Paul, remember that discussion I had with you once before? Yes, it's not personal. You made that personal. And I go, well, what if they like spit in my face or something? You very kindly wipe it away and you listen. You listen to them. You nod, you smile, and you try to give some kind of understanding. Because later on, they're going to recognize that they were the one that was in the wrong. Now, they may not come back and apologize. It doesn't matter as long as you know that you remained calm, cool, collect, and you smile the whole time. And I know you can be yelling inside your head, but you still need to be kind. And I didn't like that answer. I stood there, arms crossed. I didn't like what I was hearing. And it was sometime later and all that, maybe about, a year down the road, I literally had a guy spit in my face. And my initial reaction to that would have been to just punch him because that's who I was at the time.
Mhm.
But it resonated with me for what Don said, smile. So I walked over to the table. I asked for a napkin, got me a napkin. While this person is still yelling and screaming at me, I wiped the spit off my face and I continued to nod. I continued to, I understand. Yep. I understand your frustration. I go, so how about I just give you a comp over to the buffet? Why don't you go grab yourself something to eat? And when you've calmed down a little bit, we can discuss it further and all that. We'll try to work this out. How does that sound? And you better get me something to eat, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote him a comp. He went over, he ate, and he came back and he did indeed apologize. He was being an ass. I'm so sorry. I was mad, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big. And that's when everything that Donnie Henson had taught me had come to pass in my mind. And from there, that's how I conducted myself, not only in the casino business, but in real life, because it works.
Yeah, and how did you feel after that? Like, how did you feel after that? How did you like? Because you said the teachings of Don, they helped you. But how did you?
Felt good. I felt good. I felt like I saw everything in a whole different realm, just like you were talking about. I saw the world completely different.
Mhm.
Because violence and anger solves nothing. It solves nothing.
Yeah.
And it goes to with what Shadow Fox talks about on the flow, that a fight is a continuation. If you're going to fight, it's a continuation. It's never ending, because if you win, they're going to be mad and want to come back at you. And if they win, you're going to be mad at them and you're going to want to come back at them. It's just a continuation. It never, ever ends. And then, like you said, we're only here for a short period of time. How much of our life are we going to waste in a quarrel that doesn't need to be? So for me, it was a huge wake up in how I conducted myself after that. And I usually just don't let things get to me anymore, because I see it as senseless. When somebody wants to walk over me, talk over me, yell at me, get in my face, and throw all this anger and frustration and stuff, I sit there nice and calm and, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you ready to talk now? Are you ready to have a conversation? And if they're just like, well, it's just like, okay, well, I'll sit here and listen. Go ahead, continue. When you're done, let me know, and we'll have a conversation. And that's just the way I handle everything in life now. So
Yeah, and I think because
about
there
it.
is no communication, right? Because if people are angry, if they're in that state, you're not communicating with a reasonable human being. You're communicating with something animalistic in that person, and they're not able to reason and logic. And as you mentioned, they come back and they apologize. They say, "Hey, oh man," and even if they don't, at least I've acted right. I've acted the right way, and it is difficult. A lot of people say, "No, you've got to stand up for yourself, your honor, your ego, all of that stuff." But I like what you brought up from Shadow Fox. It's just a continuation. It's just you prolonging it. It's just you being a player in that same game. Well, if you take that, de-escalate it, you can become the keeper of peace, right? Even in those small little areas, even in the small little things, and even if it is with people who are close to you as a person, you can still say, hey, this person is hurting, this person is struggling with something. And as you said, in a casino and in those places, they are probably digging a hole deeper for themselves. So that's why you got to kind of show some compassion, and with people who are drunk, and I've worked in bars as well, and I've dealt with people who are aggressive, and it's just okay. And it's not always nice, right? There's a little bit of fear in there because you never know what they're going to do, and you know, and it's there's a difference between fighting and violence and defense, right? Sometimes you have to make sure that you defend, and that's what I think when Bruce Lee was talking about it as well, it's not about attack. It's about using the opponents, and even calling them opponent might be using the other human being's energy and deflecting it in a different way. We can do that with physique, but we can also do that with words and with our mentality. We can use their anger and deflect it somewhere else and say, okay, it's bouncing off me, and if you're ready to talk, I'm good to talk. And that's what you see with Marcus Aurelius all throughout, and he is having that struggle with himself.
Right.
And that's interesting in meditation. So you can read him kind of saying to his angry side, you are not me, right? You are a part of me, but I'm not going to use you in when I have to take action. You are a part of me, but I'm gonna deflect you. So I like how it is. People see that as an epiphany, right? If you see this is a way I can react, I don't have to go full out force. I don't have to go onto the attack to meet an attack. No, you can do it differently, de-escalate, and show that person because they are hurting. People don't. If people are happy and feeling good with themselves, they're not going to lash out. They're not going to be angry. That's not a normal state for people to want to be. I don't think. At least I don't think that people are naturally inclined of being angry. They prefer to be at peace. That's what I think.
Right. No, and I agree. And there comes a certain point where anger builds up so much that you can't help but be angry, and
Yeah.
I've seen people like that. I want to go back to something that you said and all that ego and honor. You got to stand up for yourself. You got to stand up for your honor, and I find that people, especially men take honor as toughness. Okay. Physical toughness. And what I've learned with the teachings of Don Henson is my words are my honor, not my physical strength. My words are my honor. And if I am kind, I am honorable. If I show compassion, I am honorable. And if I am respectful, I am honorable. So when I stand up for myself, I use words of kindness, and that is my honor. And if other people see that as a weakness, that is them. That falls upon them. That falls upon their perception of what honor is, and they're mistaken with it. And hopefully one day they will learn that there's a better way to honor yourself.
Yeah, and that brought me to a quote from Marcus Aurelius, and I'm just kind of looking at it because that is it, right? We have that sense of honor means like, hey, look at me, I can stand up, I can fight, no one can hurt me, right? But that is not where you're going to be hurt physically. Yeah, perhaps, right? But if you ask yourself, what is true honor? What is how you should present yourself? And if you ask people who are in a rage, and if they were able to look after the fact to look at themselves how they were acting, I'm not sure how they would look at themselves. Would they look in shame, or would they look in at a different, in a more negative light? Would they say, why was I doing this? If I see people drunk, I knew that I was like that. I look at them as like, oh, I used to be like this, and it helps me not to be like that. But I think Marcus Aurelius says that, I can't find the quote as fast, but it was pretty much, he said like, there's nothing manly in anger. There's nothing manly in being angry. The most manly part is being compassionate and being calm. Why? Because it takes far more strength of your mind, and it takes far more strength of who you are, staying close to who you are, to be that composed in an angry situation. And that doesn't mean, again, that doesn't mean if it comes to violence, hey, that you can defend yourself. But if you do it with reason and logic, you can do it in the right way. You can do it with words or with the right actions, by giving a calm presence, by showing that to other people, instead of being the one who brings violence back to the game, because then it's just going to build up and explode. So I think that you're right. That word honor and the ego, it is so often misconstrued in an idea that people think that we have to behave in a certain way to be honorable, to keep that honor. And we have that. And this is interesting. I don't know why it came up, but a few weeks ago there was that question: how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Right? You could see it being posted by Elon Musk and all these people, even in the Dutch news and everything. It's like, why is this? But what is this? Why is this coming up? And why are people thinking about it? It was a tough times. If you read, even if you were in the highest echelons of the political scene, you could get murdered anytime. It was shown that statistically, being an emperor of Rome in that day was the deadliest occupation in the history of mankind, statistically speaking, because they were murdered left and right.
Yeah.
So why people romanticize it? Because it is like, oh, look at that, you're a brave soldier walking around, but it was gruesome, it was dirty, it was tough life. It wasn't as nice as we have it now. Maybe that's why people kind of romanticize it, but it isn't nice. And as a man, it can be sometimes difficult to walk around, and you have to deal with other people. Are they going to be angry? Are they going to be violent towards me? So you have to be, on your guard, which is a shame. But if you know how to deflect things, and I don't think I've really been in a fight. I've been around fights, I've been punched. I think it was once, but it was mistakenly, that I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I've never been it. Does that say, am I weak? No, I just usually tend to go out of the way and just try to calm it down, try to reason. And if it's not possible, hey, let's see if we can separate, at least, if we can diffuse it. There's other ways to deal with it, I think. There's other ways to deal with it. And I think that that's something that we forget, especially when we look at all the violence in the films and on the video games. Is being romanticized, but it isn't nice. It isn't nice to be in it at all. There's so many better ways to deal with it, and be closer to yourself and say, I've dealt with that in the right way. And you can tell if it's the right or the wrong way.
Right. No, I agree. When I was in junior high school, I was bullied, and I took martial arts to because I wanted to be able to defend myself and beat up the bullies. And my discipline taught me not to do that. But I stuck with the discipline, and in my entire life, I have been in 3 fights. Um, Only one was because I wanted to, and that again, I was in high school, again, young, stupid, immature. The other ones, I tried to walk away. I have walked away from more potential fights than my God. I've walked away from more potential fights in a year than I've been in fights in my entire life. So, and I always feel so much better walking away, having a conversation. And as I've gotten older, a lot of times, people that want to fight and are looking to fight, in the end, I'll be sitting down having a cup of coffee with them, having a conversation,
Yeah.
because that is more productive, and again, that's how people can, again, when you can turn something that could facilitate into something violent, and instead you turn it into a conversation. Now you've created something productive, because now you
Yeah.
get to learn about each other. You get an understanding of where you're coming from and why. Why were you feeling that way? Why did you think that you had to, puff your chest with me? Whatever made you think that you had to go that route to begin with? Because look, we're sitting here talking now. Why couldn't this have been the beginning? Well, I don't know. Maybe you need to take and reflect on yourself on why you do that and not do.
Hmm.
Maybe what it is that you're doing causes that antagonistic perception, and you would be in a lot less fights. Now, if you like fighting, then go start training and get in the MMA or, the UFC or something like that, or go to a gym, a boxing ring or something, and get that anger and frustration out in the ring. Don't do it with people that you live by, talk with, communicate with on a daily basis. If you have an issue, take it somewhere else so you don't harm other people.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation when I was in Northern California with a man, and it changed his whole perspective of life because everything for him was a fight, you know. And I know there are people that have that mindset that everything is a fight, just getting up in the morning and have to go to work to a job that you don't like. That in itself is a battle for people, some
Yeah.
people, because you got to put food on the table. And I don't like who I work with. But again, it comes back to one of the quotes. I think it was Marcus Aurelius that said that you have to tolerate people. And I think that's something that I've been doing again before Stoicism, is teaching people to tolerate each other. And now with Stoicism, oh my goodness, it just makes so many things so much clearer.
Yeah, I think that quote is, you can instruct them or endure them. I think that's the one where you can say you can instruct them, and how you can instruct them by setting the right example. At least that's how I feel, instead of using the words. But as we're talking about, with violence, there's so many different ways of having these kind of altercations, right? With frustrations, with people just go ahead and stand in a queue and or in a supermarket, and people are in a hurry, and people, as you said, people are not happy in their job, they are frustrated with themselves. And I think that is something that we should really remember when we deal with other people. Like, if we have to try to put ourselves in their shoes a little bit more, but how we do that? By looking at our own side. How often are we frustrated? How often are we angry? How
Yes.
often are we, and then ask ourselves why. Sometimes because you're tired, sometimes because you're hungry, sometimes because life is just too much, sometimes because your job is not good. There's so many different reasons. And if we remember that when we deal with people, a simple question as like, hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's going on? Talk to me about it. Those simple things can let people, and then listening to them with an attentive ear can really help them, and can really show that, hey, there's a different side. And then you can show that right examples. Like, we don't have to fight. We don't have to be frustrated. It is natural to happen, and don't get upset with people to do it. But then try to stay, or just let them be for a little bit. Let them kind of rage out, and to say, okay, as you mentioned with your example, the beginning, just let them rage out. Diffuse them, deflect them somewhere else, and then come back.
Yeah.
But there's so many different situations we can get in. And as you said, stoicism is such a great tool to use that. And I've
Yeah.
been using it as a training situation. And I'll come back to some other examples if we at the end. Because there's so many, instead of just one by one, there's also with the grand public. And there's some other teachings I wanted to bring on from Epictetus that are great for this. But in this case, especially when you're one-on-one with frustrated people, remember that they are hurting, right? People who are frustrated or angry, they're hurting themselves. They don't do this because you are happy and you're feeling good about yourself. That's something that, at least from my experience, it's something that didn't really, come across, that someone is like, oh, I'm doing great, and let's get angry, let's get, frustrated. That's not what people do.
Right. Right. First time I read anything about Stoicism was back in 2009, and if I'd read anything prior, it didn't register with me. But 2009 is the first time I read about Stoicism, and that's when I truly started to pay attention to it. Um, I had studied the Pythagoreans back in when I was a lot younger, um, and I really I didn't get into them in the Stoic aspect of them. I was more into, oh, I really like this quote. I want to apply this to my life. I really like this. I want to apply this to my life. You know, so it was more of an admiration of things that they had said versus an actual getting into the whys of why they would say these things. Where in 2009 is where I started getting more into the whys in relation to philosophy and stoicism and just a lot of the great things that are out there. Why would they say this? And when you and Bryce have your show, make note that there's quite a few times that I will bring in, well, if you remember 2,000 years ago, it was different. And this is why they probably thought that way then. Why do we basically think this way now? Because the times were different, slavery, war, how people were treated, how women, didn't have a voice, just all these different things that, took place 2,000 years ago versus how we look at things today. Bryce had said something back to what we were talking about there. Marcus Aurelius had a reputation as a person easily annoyed even as a youth. His teacher, Junius Rusticus, I know I just brutalized that, noted his temper. Ego, pride, anger all have their place under the dominion of reason and logic. And, there's a lot of truth to that, because no matter what it is that you're doing, where even I, on a daily basis, sometimes I'll sit here and I'll start getting frustrated. And I got to ask myself, okay, why am I this way? Why am I this way right now? Okay, I'm in pain. My pain should not be reflected upon the pup who's trying to sniff all these different things, because this is where she's getting her information of the day. And I'm trying to deprive her of that because I want to get back home because my back is killing me, So it's, I catch myself on a daily basis on a multitude of things, just dealing with life in general. And so when I interact with people, I also have to remember, hey, my back is hurting, so be calm and don't get snippy, I remind myself, don't get snippy, because I can get snippy. Okay. Yeah. I can get real flippity real quick, and you will hear the tone of my voice change, because I will start to talk a little bit deeper, and I will be more direct and more on point. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, I mean, you can hear the frustration that starts coming out as my voice will increase and become a little deeper and more direct. So, and I listen for that in myself, because if I hear myself doing that, I have to take like 10 breaths, calm down, and apologize, and then continue.
And those are great things, right? If you mentioned to find some quotes and they resonate and you can see them, and not even asking yourselves the whys. And this is something that everybody can do, even if it's stoicism, and you read another quote there. Like I read one of the quotes that is predominantly pointed to Freud, the one about responsibility and freedom, which I found out isn't really Freud's quote, but it's kind of went there. But you can find things everywhere, and if those specific words resonate with you, if they help you, remember them. And the philosophers back in the day used to write like a handbook. This is the Enchiridion of Epictetus. It wasn't written by him; it was written by one of his students. Why? Because he thought those teachings were important, and he would keep that handbook with him, so he would be able to refer to it in moments when he needed it. For example, in your example, if you get angry, and anyone's example, if you get angry or frustrated, you take those breaths, you take that pause, and you just remember, okay, this is why that quote resonated with me, and this is how I can deal with it. So you build your own little handbook of quotes in your mind or on paper, or whatever works for you, and that's how you can build your own little tool belt with things that can help you. So once when you said, and it's a great quote that Bryce brought up there, because that's what Marcus Aurelius did with his meditations. He was writing those things, and he was like, okay, remember, I'm thankful for Junius Rusticus, who was my teacher, who told me, listen, Marcus, whenever you get angry, do this, reason and logic, calm yourself down. So that's when we've got to build those teachings, where we have to be actively reminding ourselves and thinking about it. And what you said, is a great point, where you can recognize in yourself. They say, oh, wait a minute, my voice is changing. I can feel my pulse. I can feel the things, aggravating. This is the moment when I need to take it a notch back, take a deep breath. And then we get to that book by Daniel Kahneman, The Thinking Fast and Slow. And I can see Bryce in the background. It's like, yeah, there it is. Because that's a great book. That's Mind 1 and Mind 2. And even if you don't know the why, but if you start to practice these things and they start to become routine, the faster you get those responses, the faster you can take that deep breath, the faster you can calm yourself down. And that's when it starts to practice. And first you need that epiphany, hey, this can help. And then you can see, I'm going to apply it. And you're going to welcome it. And you can say, hey, I want to apply it more. I'm going to apply it more. So those are great things to know. And I always say it doesn't have to be Stoicism. Stoicism works for me from my personal view because it speaks to me. It has the tone of voice that I need to hear. And I say, Epictetus obviously oftentimes is that verbal slap on the face that I sometimes need. It's like, Benny, just wake up or do this because that works. But if it doesn't, try to find your own philosophy of life. Try to find your own mantras, your own key things that work for you. And I think that is something that we should try. And then that's why the Stoics say virtue is the only good. Why? Because it will make you live a morally right life. It will make you sure that you're living right, which then results in living more peaceful. And that's, I think, the natural state that most people want to live in. They want to be peace. They want to be peace of mind. They want to be peace of the surroundings, peace for the people around them. That's the main thing that we all seek. But why is it so difficult, right? As you said, back in the day, 2,000 years ago, they had war, they had all these things. We still have them in a different setting, right? But it's human nature hasn't changed much, I think, in that sense.
Right. And and you and Bryce, you guys are really great at bringing up quotes from like Marcus and Seneca and Epictetus and Zeno. I'm going to bring you a Pythagoras quote. Be silent, or let thy words be worth more than silence.
Okay. Be silent,
or let thy words be worth more than silence. In other words, if you are going to speak, make your words count. Make sure they mean something. Otherwise, be silent.
Yeah, and I think there's some quotes by the Stoics as well. Make sure that what you say is the right thing, otherwise be silent. But I like that as well. I still have. I told you, like I have the books of Diogenes Laertes, the Lives of Eminent Philosophers, and I'm at the Pythagoreans, so I'm going to read up on those as well. You've really triggered my interest in that one.
Yes, I may not like everything about the culture of the Pythagoreans and how they treated people, but there was a lot of wisdom, behind their philosophy, So, Bryce says, as a Stoic, I'm not controlled by others' actions, and I'm not controlled by impulses, tendencies, or biases. My self-mastery allows me to deal with moments, or I can walk away. Yes, exactly. And if everybody would take on that persona and all that, because Twitter or X Spaces and tweets, posts that people put out there and all that, you can choose on whether or not you want to engage, and when somebody says something and it's just like, but I just couldn't help myself. No, you could have. You could have. You chose not to. You chose that interaction because you didn't have to. Oh, no, but I had, no, you didn't. But I had to. No, you didn't. You didn't. You chose to because you wanted to. And now, of course, this gets into wants versus needs. Then, again, this goes into serving self and self-serving. When other people put things out there and you say you had no choice, that's self-serving. Mm-hmm. You're going out there because you want to be the bigger mouth, the bigger whatever it is. You got to be I'm better than you, I'm superior to you, my thoughts mean more than yours, or something like that. That's self-serving. If you're serving self, you're going to listen to what was being said. You're going to take in what was being said, and you're going to choose your words wisely and make it worth it, or be silent.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing as well. As I was thinking, you have that win or lose mentality. We don't want to lose, right? But that's something that we say, the mentality is like, oh, I've lost here, I've lost face, I've lost money, I've lost this, I've lost that. Hey, that's the situation. And what Bryce was saying, we can choose in the moment or we can walk away. The moment will walk away by itself. The moment will be gone next time around. So I think that is a great way of kind of looking at it. That I don't want to lose face, I don't want to win or lose. That is a big thing, right?
Right. Bryce says there is a time where battle is just and unavoidable. Even Stoics went to war, but this is the unfortunate exception, never the rule. And Bryce, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree. There is never a time for where battle is just. Okay, I completely disagree with that. There's never a time where battle is just. Defense might be just. Defense might be just. And I believe there's a difference. Just my own personal thoughts. But
yeah, I think that could be a good conversation on another topic, right? To see, when we have to attack or defend. And I don't think we should, they say, oh, sometimes the offense is the best defense. But still, I think with battles and things, there's so many, again, there's a win or lose mentality, right? If we would like the world to be equal, a lot of people would have to take a step back and a more steps back, and that hurts more, right? It always hurts more to go back than if you can gain something. But if we really want the world to be equal, a lot of the world would have to say, okay, we have to just tone it down. We have to make sure that we can give up some of these luxuries and spread it all equally. But it's difficult. People don't want to do that. So I think that is why, the battle, the justification of war, because you're afraid of losing what you have. That's why people put up defenses instead of saying, hey, let's come to an agreement. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can give and take. But that's not what people tend to do in human nature. They say, hey, I want to take. And if you want to take from me, then that's a fight.
Right. No, I get that. I get that. And again, I think there are diplomatic ways to handle things. I think that if people truly go with, again, in good faith, I think that things can be worked out. Bryce added, defense includes battle, and he just put up, I should have said conflict is sometimes avoidable, especially when the security of the group is threatened. Okay. Yeah, that is definitely a better wording. Conflict is sometimes unavoidable. That I agree with. Conflict is sometimes unavoidable.
And then it depends on how we pick up arms, right? Because then it's kind of how you deal with the conflict, and you don't always deal with reasonable people. Your example, that person who was angry and standing in your face, shouting and spitting in your face, he wasn't reasonable. So then you have to, and you dealt with it from a reasonable side. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to assess the situation. If he gets angry, if he becomes violent, then I'm going to have to change my stance, right? Then I'm going to have to defend myself. So you can then, again, in that moment, apply the right judgment. But if the crowd is, if the people behind you, you can become that shield. Say, okay, you know what? I am here, bring it on, but I'm going to defend the people behind me because that's my duty, right? Those are my capabilities. So I think that is, then you can find that conflict, but it's always in the moment, that judgment. And with the right reason and logic, you can use the right weapons and tools to disarm it or to deflect it or maybe to defend against it.
Right. And that will be a wonderful conversation. We're going to have to do a show on this topic and all that,
Yeah.
How regular humans approach these things versus how a Stoic would want to approach it and try to deal with it. I think this would be a great conversation. I think for that one, Bryce is actually going to have to come on here and show his face. Yeah. So, yes.
And I wanted, like, in the sake of this conversation, I wanted to bring up one example because it's also dealing with people, but within the bigger scope of, like, in the public, right, with a bigger public. And this is one of the quotes of Epictetus in his handbook, number 4, and he talks about going to the baths, right? The Roma baths, and these are not like the bath that we have here, but these are like public baths. And I went to an hammam in Morocco once, where you sit with people and they bathe each other, they bathe just where you sit. And it's an interesting experience to see people do that. But that was what the Romans did, and he taught this example, and he said, you know, if you intend to engage in any activity, remind yourself what the nature of the activity is. So he's already saying to us, you can apply this to anything that you want. And there's some examples. If I, get to the end, he says, if you're going to bathe, imagine what's going to happen in the bath: the splashing of water, the crowding, the scolding, the stealing. And like that, you will be more steadily engaged in the activity if you frankly say, I want to bathe and I want to hold with my will in accordance to nature. So you say, hey, I'm going to bathe, but I want to be at peace. I want to be who I am. I want to be calm. So I took this example for when I go driving. I used to not have real road rage, but I would get annoyed and irritated by people as I would drive, and you see people cutting in front of you and the traffic jams. So from now on, whenever I go out and drive, it's like, okay, remind yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to drive. You're going to go out on the road, other people are going to drive, and you're going to have to deal with it, right? And then you can prepare yourself mentally for it. So he says, okay, if you're going to drive, but you remain calm, that is up to you. People cut in line, okay, slow it down. Make sure that it's safe. If people go too fast, get out of the way. Don't go and add additional anger or aggravation to the situation, because it's beside the fact that it's not safe, it's also going to disrupt your inner peace. And you can apply that to driving, or when you go to the supermarket. All of these things that you find that you're in annoyance with or get irritated by, you can remind yourself before you go, I'm going to go shopping and I want to hold on to my peace. And then it becomes a training. And then again, you can find a humor in the situation where you say, hey, I used to get angry at this, but you can just see people cutting in line or standing for 5 minutes in front of the products that they can't find. So that is another thing of training yourself. The first one was more like with individuals, and now it's with the bigger public. So, the Stoics, they have us covered.
Yes. I tell you, everyday frustrations play upon everybody in some way or another, and people just need to step back, take a breath. Another quote by Pythagoras and all that is, in anger, we should refrain both from speech and action. And you can apply that in all the emotions when you really think about it. In frustration, refrain from speech and action. In sadness and depression, you need to, all these different emotions, even good emotions, love, joy. Sometimes, you get extremely happy and you go jumping around and bouncing around and you just start hugging people and stuff like that. You could offend somebody. You might catch somebody off guard. You could anger somebody. Again, refrain from speech and action. Think about that feeling that you're feeling and utilize it in the best way possible. I mean, there's just so many different aspects to what we acknowledge as what's right and wrong, or what's proper or improper. We have to think about these things. And again, this is where the four virtues come in, temperance being a main one right here. Because in joy, I mean, you might go jumping around and you could fall over a ledge or something, you could injure yourself. So you have to be aware of other things. And I think a lot of people, when they're dealing with everyday life, they become so used to the things that they're dealing with that they are no longer aware of what's their surroundings are. They have a memory of their surroundings, but not an awareness of the current surroundings. And any little thing that could be different could, cause something, so awareness, I think, is a big part of utilizing, all four of those virtues, and also in being able to have discussions with people, um, reading people's body language, how they stand, how they move, how they walk. Um, Sometimes if a person's in pain, you might be able to acknowledge just in your awareness of how they walk that they might be in pain, or they might have a disability or something like that. So these are the different things that we should be aware of when we're interacting with other people, period. I mean, even like in the job, you got somebody that you can sense that they have some frustration going on. It might not be the best time to come up and ask them to help you with something. You might have to walk away and try to do it on your own, and then wait until they are in a better mind frame before you can, hey, I can see that you're not busy now and all that. Would you be available to help me with something? It also comes down into the way that you ask things. Um, would you be able to help me with something versus, hey, will you help me with something?
Yeah.
Tone, you know, people don't usually make a conscious recognition of the tone that they use. When I was a pit boss out at Green Valley Ranch Casino, they had me do a job called the pencil, where you're the person that when everybody comes back from their break, you're directing them which table that they're going to go to. And I was where they would come back, I would point the pencil at them. Literally, I would point the pencil at them and I would say, BJ 17, craps 3, roulette 2, and it was pointed out to me that I was being disrespectful. And I'm just like, how am I being disrespectful? I'm telling people where they have to go. Paul, what did you just say? I said, I'm telling people where they have to go. I'm telling people where they have to go. I am telling people where they have to go. I can do this better, can't I? Yes, yes. So again, another lesson learned, but somebody else, if you were to tell them that, they might get defensive. Well, and now the conversation isn't going to go forward anywhere. You also have to have a person that's willing to be open to criticism, to critique. And that's something that I encourage everybody to do. Be open to critique and criticism, because all it can do is help improve. And if somebody's wrong about how they're perceiving you, and you take a true step back and you evaluate that, then you will know that they are mistaken. Or you might actually say, maybe there's a little truth to this. Maybe I could work on what I'm doing, so you have to be open to it.
And the interesting thing is then the critique turns into something positive. If you where before you saw it as critique, now you say, hey, maybe this is kind of revealing something about me. Maybe this is something that I didn't see about me. So you can again turn that around. And
Yep.
as you said with the emotions, even that, like we talk about, okay, not dealing out of fear, but with joy and love. A lot of people, they do a lot of crazy things when they are in those ecstatic emotions, right? Then it's sometimes it's better to have that contrarian kind of feeling where you say, okay, you know what, I might be on the top of the, like I'm winning right now. Let's take it down a notch. Let's see where this is going. Let's make sure that I don't fall back, and let's keep going. Let's keep building, because it's not the top of the mountain. It's just one of those stages in between. And I was like, hey, be proud, be grateful, be appreciative that you are here. But the journey is going to last, and it's going to, you might be in a little peak right now, but you might have still a mountain to climb. So it's good to keep that in mind. And as you said, temperance then really comes back into play. And that's how we should deal with people as well, to be tempered and to be respectful. It's a lot of ways of, and again, this kind of comes back to where we started. It's instead of pointing the finger at others, instead of saying they are wrong, they are angry, they are, no, how am I dealing with this? How am I, um, what is my influence in this? What is my responsibility? And then a lot of things change because you take agency over your life. You take agency instead of being influenced by others. You say, how am I allowing myself to be influenced this way? So that is a big change in dynamic of life. And as you said, how do you speak to people? And you don't speak to everybody the same way. Some people they would appreciate, hey, you go to this table, okay, that's it, because some people what they say about the Dutch is sometimes, people might not know I'm from the Netherlands. We can be quite direct, and sometimes, I'm not good at chit chat. Sometimes if I go to a job, or someone needs to tell me do this, I say, okay, that's all I need to know, right? And so it all depends on how you deal with people. But the first step is getting to know the people. It's not like you do that from the get go. You want to get to know them. You want to earn your respect, and then you can say, okay, this is how we deal with each other. Okay, good, but build that relationship.
Yes. Definitely, definitely. Oh, I hear my clock. I hear my clock. We're upon the closing moments. Yes. All
Sad
right.
sounds.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to leave you with another Pythagoras quote and all that. Choose rather to be strong of soul than strong of body.
Mhm. That reminds me of, and I'm going to counter that with a Stoic quote. I'm not sure if I'm going to butcher it, and probably will. But, we often take more with care of our possessions than we do of our soul. And I think that is, I think it was Epictetus or Seneca said something like that. But I like how, and it's interesting how they all kind of touch on the same things, but with different ways of putting it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So what should we talk about next week?
I think we could deal with like, I was thinking about either to get to know how to know yourself or the emotions. I think it would be one of those two would be good, and I think they kind of hit maybe. Yeah, let's see. I think one of those two would be a good topic for next time.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Any closing thoughts?
I think, yeah, for me, just keep it simple. Be kind to yourself and to others, and don't assume that someone is angry because of you. Assume that they are angry because of something that's hurting them, and try to be compassionate. And ask them just a simple question: "Hey, how are you doing?" And mean it genuinely, right? I think that is something that can benefit. We can all benefit from.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And my closing thought would be first, love yourself. Find the things that you don't like about yourself, change those things, and learn to love yourself because you truly can't love another until you love yourself. And
And
with
can
that,
I can
yeah,
I
go
add
ahead.
one Marcus Aurelius quote from that because it's a really good one. He says, "If you wish to be loved, love." I know that's just if you want to be loved, do it yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
I just and also just there's some interesting things coming up. I see Bryce is there, and Bryce is watching, but we have some interesting things coming up this week. So stay tuned as well. And there he is. Yeah, thanks, Bryce. Great discussion. Now we've got some interesting things coming up this week, so we're looking forward to that. And yeah, thanks for having me on again, Paul. It's always great to be here.
It's my pleasure. I love it. I love it. I could sit here for hours and do this. I mean, I love to discuss the human experience.
Yeah.
Because everybody has growth to some extent, and I'm constantly growing. My growth is never ending. I learn more about myself and others on a daily basis because I allow myself to do that, and
Hmm.
that's where the difference comes in. I could easily be old and bitter and closed off and just see things in my way is the only way and that's just the way it is type mentality, but I don't do that. I take great pride in learning from others because there's always something new that I can learn.
Yeah. And that's why these conversations are super valuable, and more people should have them, right? Honest, open conversations. Whether you agree or disagree, be respectful, come out of good faith, and you will all be better from it.
Yes, yes. Okay, so before we close out, I want to throw up. I'm going to be doing this for quite a while and all that. The suicide hotline, suicide and crisis lifeline. If you are in a bad mental state, you need someone to talk to. Dial 988 or call 1-800-273 talk 8255. Um, Mental health is a serious thing, and there's been a lot more suicides here in the last few years than prior years. So I'm putting it out there as somebody that, deals with this personally. These dark thoughts, they come, and sometimes we feel alone. So if you need someone to talk to, please call that hotline.
And just to add to that, Paul, there's also like if you go to if you Google international suicide hotlines, there are those for like pretty much a lot of the countries all around the world. Many of them have them. So just to add that as well, if you're from the States, 988. But if you want to from another country and you want to find the number, just it's on Google, and most of the countries have them as well available.
Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you again, Benny, and everybody. Remember, be kind, be happy, and make good things come your way. Thank you.